Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Owaisi started by saying that liberal democracy is not what we have in India, but what we have is a constitutional democracy that, as he says, acknowledges historic divisions that we've had and the adjustments that we need to make to move towards a more progressive future. However, that is not enough of a political compromise to avoid addressing the far deeper, far more harmful narratives that underlie these very questions. Just to say that because in 1950 this is only as far as we could have gone is not reason enough to say that is only as far as we will go. The underlying principle of a democratic polity encourages discussion and debate not merely based on what is prescribed, but what is appropriate for that circumstance. The restrictions in our constitution, firstly, are merely contentions on the side of certain academics. There is, of course, a certain view that says that our secularism is not really different from that of other jurisdictions. But that's not for today. The question that we ought to address is whether the underlying principle of equity and the underlying principle of fairness that we owe to our fellow human beings is in peril. And secondly, whether this motion helps us move towards a better future. Secondly, and this is something that came out in the first speech with Mr. Sekri, who argued that markers of harassment should not be ignored. We should acknowledge for these historic inequities. The reason some people are in a pitiable circumstance today is because of the very reasons that have caused their problems. Now, this is a main issue that I will highlight because the notion of political identity, whether it is inherently individualistic or it's always defined by social or collective interaction. For their side to have the upper hand in this debate, they must show that people are inherently political. And as Dr. Chandok argued earlier, that's not entirely true. You have individuals who from birth are conditioned by society and structures that exist in order to come to a political position. But for the purposes of a principled argument, we must look further back. We must look to see whether a concession that harms that have already been conceded to will be perpetuated is a safe enough solution for us to not ever look back to see whether those concessions should not have been made in the first place. And that's what the Supreme Court of India has done in this judgment. Because it's not saying that we will ignore past realities, but it is saying that those compensatory measures that have been a result of certain problematic political situations must not be allowed to continue merely because of original sin. Our quest here is to identify original sin and to separate it from the harms that they cause. And this brings us to our substantive case, at least in my speech. Firstly, we must take down this foundational myth that's come out from their side, that democracy in India is not inherently liberal and that it's a compromise. But all democracies should value individual choice. Anything that can vitiate individual choice is inherently illiberal, as it harks back to those social considerations that are profoundly problematic. See, no social grouping can be mutually beneficial for all members among themselves as well as those outside the membership of that social group. What happens when you have individuals who are persistently allowed to appeal to secondary divisive social groupings, ignoring the first inherent non-divisive nature of human existence? This perpetuation effectively entrenches those hierarchies that existed. Sure, you could claim that this is a response to a hegemonic oppression coming from what is often called the majority. But we must reassess whether that majority has enough clout to effectively and consistently and pervasively do it. And secondly, if we are in a position where we can be honest with ourselves and identify the underlying principle that ought to treat them equally and not differently merely because we are compensating for a historic problem. The individual is a priori apolitical. Aristotle calls this political naturalism. She is informed and molded by all that's around her, and therefore our quest should identify that original state. Now, because this is a liberal setup, we must acknowledge when is it that the state intervenes in these pure expressions of freedom. The state must intervene when the stakeholders that exist are able to take advantage of the situation to corrupt the integrity of an individualistic expression. And that's what's happened, and throughout the history of electoral politics in India, and this is my second substantial argument, that empirical evidence clearly points to a situation where individuals and minor groups have taken advantage of historic inequities in order to, one, re-entrench themselves, and two, forget those individuals that they're supposed to argue for, and to argue for a collective identity that ignores individual sense of self. What is this? Because exclusionary group membership must be circumscribed by a net social gain that we have on account of uniqueness or narrowness of their circumstances. So, for instance, if you were to argue that Dalits in a certain community are inherently troubled by oppressive hierarchies, that's a fair enough position to take. But what has happened under the guise of this approach is a normalization of certain elite forces within these narratives, which have merely entrenched and empowered themselves without delivering consequential benefit to those that they claim to represent. How has this happened? We can point to a few examples. One, appeals to religion, caste, and language, as they've pointed out. The Pakistan movement, we spoke of history and the nationalist movement. What has that done? That was purely on identity of an other from what the nationalists wanted to advocate, a sense of civic nationalism for our future. Secondly, Islamic fundamentalism. That's a reality. Islamic fundamentalism is often condoned, or there aren't enough powers within leaders within their communities to retain and restrain it, because their constant line of engagement with the body politic has been on identity and not on individual. And more importantly, religion-backed politicization of energy policy. Anyone who's been following what's happening in Quadrangle knows where the opposition is coming from, how that's channeled into what is otherwise a question of energy security for all Indians, regardless of your divisions and regardless of your own questions. What does this do? And this brings me to a very specific rebuttal that I had for Mr. Sekhri, when he argued that Martin Luther King said that I will not have my daughters judged based on the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. What rejecting this motion entails is a perpetuation of judgment, first based on the color of your skin, and secondly, based on the content of their character. Sure, in the earliest of instances, perhaps there was reason to identify by these markers, but we have matured as a polity to set aside these distinctions and move straight to content of character. Even if that's not reality today, that is an aspirational future that we can most certainly go forward to. And finally, what Mr. Dixit said. He said, and from what we can see, that's a principal concession to the motion. The fact that this is a problem year-round and that we only have 45 days to counter it should not be reason enough to be given the leeway that you are in those 45 days to counter it. Because elections don't happen just to the Lok Sabha. You have elections at the municipal level, at the state level, all of which are staggered throughout a 5-year term. What this judgment effectively does, or even if it's narrowed by judicial decree, what it can do in principle is to curb politically charged, communally or based on religion and language, charged addresses to these groups throughout 5 years. So on side opposition, we've already had a principal concession, and that's something that we're glad to highlight. And finally, where do we locate this debate? This is a question of the risks of hegemonic domination versus the obfuscation of unrelated yet legitimate individualistic concerns by broad umbrella grouping. The fact that a poor Muslim would like to define her own concerns not merely as the identity of a Muslim, but as several identities. You can have an umbrella of opinions that inform your paths. But what empirically has happened in Indian electoral politics is the domination of whatever is the most convenient identity and the exploitation of that identity by the political powers that be. And we have innumerable examples to this effect on both sides of the spectrum. For instance, what happened with the Assam movement in the 80s? It was both a vociferous and virulent and a violent defense of Assamese culture, as well as a consequential appeasement of illegal immigration that was a threat to the very existence of harmony within those regions. What our motion proposes and what the Supreme Court has endorsed is a rejection of both ideals. And this is a concern that Mr. Owaisi had, and it shouldn't exist within this motion. Because even if someone explicitly argues for a majoritarian view that oppresses a minority on the grounds of that being a majority, this should cover it. So the only problem and question that remains is whether the other side is willing to make a principled concession to the fact that we want an illiberal future. And I don't think anyone across that bench would, because what they entail and expect is a future that respects individual liberty and can further that. This is almost what Immanuel Kant said. He said that there is a categorical imperative upon you to act and to move forward, and therefore this is an obligation that the government is proud to propose upon our political class today.
Individual is first apolitical and said that human beings have been conditioned to believe that identity is important. He also argued that democracy has matured and that rejecting this motion would necessarily mean embracing the domination of majoritarian politics.